This is United for Biodiversity, the Alliance podcast, a platform that unites global voices in a call to action to protect our planet's rich biodiversity. Join us for critical insights and let's stand united for biodiversity.
Welcome to this week's episode of United for Biodiversity, the Alliance podcast. I am your host, Kiana Wilberg. Today, we continue the discussion on the importance of having critical actors part of the fight to protect the world's biodiversity. To help us with today's discussion is Ms. Aiesha Williams of the WWF Guianas. She's a conservation director for Suriname and Guyana. Ms. Williams, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, Kiana. I hope I can call you Kiana.
Of course, absolutely.
Yes, it's good to be here.
So the WWF Guianas has been around for quite some time,
Yes.
but not many folks understand the important work it's been doing over the years. Give us a little insight to the work you've been doing there and what WWF Guianas has been doing.
Well, WWF Guianas is part of a global network of World Wildlife Fund, WWF. The Guyana's office actually covers both Guyana and Suriname. And we've been established since 1998. And
Wow.
we've been in Guyana since 1999.
Mm-hmm.
Starting first with, management staff, two staff basically. And then we've progressed. I've been the first technical person based in
Wow.
Guyana. We,
Wow.
of course, had other technical
Mm-hmm.
persons that were based in Suriname
Mm-hmm.
and who shared the work and managed the work in Guyana. But I've been with WWF since for 18 years now.
Wow,
And
congrats.
thank you. And it has been a really fulfilling role and a place where I want to be because WWF really contributes to the conservation of the world's biodiversity with people. It would be national agents within national agencies, within communities, with private sector, and this is globally.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the Guyanas and in Guyana, we do also do the same thing, focused on biodiversity conservation. That means forest, fresh water, the ocean environment, uh, and at the same time working with businesses and communities to really strengthen their involvement in use of biodiversity and natural resources. And so supporting communities, for instance, in building their capacity, providing technical resources or financial resources to really ensure that their livelihoods are maintained, well-being are maintained, and of course, nature is maintained. Similarly, with the private sector, for instance, working with gold miners in ensuring that gold mining really does, when it's practiced, does not really pose detrimental threat to the environment and to people's health because that's some of the impacts from gold mining and other sectors, forestry and all the various economic sectors that Guyana is involved in. We also support many of these sectors through government or the various companies or individuals that are involved and also the community.
That is some incredible work. We're really grateful to have the WWF part of the Guyana community with such work you've been doing. But I want to tap into your experience a bit more. Now, the Amazon is often referred to as the lungs of the planet. In your view, what are the most urgent threats facing this vital ecosystem today? And what's at stake of being lost?
Thank you for that question. That's a great question. It's really an important issue today, as it
Mm-hmm.
is has been for several years, and why part of why WWF in the Guyanas and in the Amazon exists. There are several offices within each of the Amazon countries
Mm-hmm.
because the Amazon is the vital, as you said, the lungs of the earth. Is seen as the lungs of
Mm-hmm.
the earth because there's so much forest cover within the Amazon. And at this current state, the Amazon, we have lost almost 17% of the Amazon forest, right?
Wow.
Yes. And And we are at a point, an irreversible point, if we continue and if we lose 20 or about 20 to 25% more of forest in total within the Amazon, then that really is a detrimental and irreversible impact on biodiversity and ecosystems in this region, in the Amazon region, because uh, this really impacts on people's health, it impacts on biodiversity. And what's causing this? It's deforestation and degradation of forests, which leads to biodiversity loss, and also which increases the impacts of climate change. Because as we lose forest, carbon is released into the atmosphere, which increases global warming, which affects climate and the weather patterns within the region, which causes less rain, increases drought in the region, and ultimately impacts on biodiversity. So species are lost, habitats are lost, and ultimately people are impacted.
Wow. So our survival, our very survival depends on this.
Yes. Because many people think, okay, the forest is there, especially those that are living in more urban areas and cities.
Mm-hmm.
They think that forests are far away from me, so it has nothing to do with me. But it's a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The forest contributes to the water cycle. We get water. This is just one example,
Mm-hmm.
right? The forest produces, maintains the water cycle, which produces water that we use, and which supports the food that we eat through agriculture and those kinds of things. So it's really connected to us.
I love that point. And that brings me to another important point that I want to raise via question, of course. We often talk about biodiversity loss in the Amazon, but what are some of the impacts on some of the indigenous communities who they depend on the very lifeblood within these forests and within connecting with nature and so forth? What are some of the impacts?
Indeed, indigenous and local communities, because there are
Mm-hmm.
some forest dependent and natural resource dependent communities that are not indigenous also,
Quite
and
true.
they feel the brunt of the impacts from biodiversity loss and climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the Amazon, a large percentage of the peoples of the Amazon are dependent on these natural resources that we're losing. And if we don't change actions, then it would they would feel foremost the impact. And the impacts are felt, and I alluded to this earlier. The
Mm-hmm.
impacts are felt by communities in terms of agriculture, especially those that depend on the earth for
Mm-hmm.
production of food directly.
Mm-hmm.
Agriculture yield reduces because, of course, water is not available as it's expected to in the cycle that it's expected to. So food productivity is reduced for communities. It impacts on their health, physical health. Diseases are more increased. And because these communities, many of them are rural, they have limited access to health care and so on. They feel the brunt of those impacts. Also, it impacts on water availability for communities. And this is really key. And water is vital for life, for livelihoods.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking about livelihoods, a lot of indigenous and local communities' livelihoods are tied to nature
Mm-hmm.
and biodiversity, forest, freshwater systems, and changes in climate and loss of biodiversity directly, as you can see, really directly affects their livelihoods, whether it's tourism, whether it's agriculture based and agro processing. All these are really tied to nature, and so communities are will be affected. They are affected currently, and in the future, if things continue the way they are, then they will be affected much more.
Now, in the entire landscape of biodiversity and the discussion surrounding that, there's a term that comes up and it's inclusive conservation.
Yes.
What does this mean for you personally, and how is that tied to the Amazon and the protection of the green assets, the green treasures therein?
Yes. I just spoke about indigenous and local communities.
Right.
So inclusive conservation ensures that these communities, indigenous peoples, tribal peoples, some people refer to as an forest dependent or natural resource dependent communities, are included, are involved, and participate, are leading conservation efforts
Mm-hmm.
of their territory, within their territory, and also outside of their territory. If they're protected areas or lands outside of their territory, inclusive conservation can be considered in this instance. So it ensures that conservation respects the rights of peoples, indigenous and local community peoples. It ensures that the rights are maintained, respected, and also people's cultures, their traditional knowledge are incorporated into conservation efforts. Inclusive, it encapsulates all of that
Mm-hmm.
and ensures and put people at the center of conservation.
That's awesome. Now, I want to turn quickly to another important topic that floats around in the biodiversity discussion landscape, and that is the importance of finance, direct access to finance, rather. What does this mean in the context of Indigenous conservation, and why is it a game changer?
Uh, I was going to use a local term we normally use. Money is important, so I'll say that. Money really, and finances really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for inclusive conservation to really make sense, there needs to be financing um, for communities, for indigenous and local communities. And it does not mean that an organization, for instance, or some entity or individual external to communities are spending the funds. What it means also is that financing goes directly, that there is direct access for financing to communities, indigenous and local communities, who are the primary actors and who are in immediate contact with nature. And oftentimes, communities are involved in conservation of nature, protecting nature, but they are not benefiting. They're not benefiting from financial resources. It's part of their way of life. It's part of their, daily actions and traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And so they contribute to conservation and meeting global targets for conservation. So, direct financing to communities will ensure that this is done well, this is consistent and sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Those conservation efforts by communities are sustainable. It also contributes not only to conserving nature, but also maintaining their livelihoods, right? Because the world is changing. Communities can change their perspective on how they want to develop and grow,
Absolutely.
and sometimes resources are needed. Oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
resources are needed, financial resources are needed to support them. And so direct access to financing for indigenous and local communities is important, because then they can make the decisions. They have the right to determine where the finances should go, who should be involved, and how they should be involved to ensure that conservation is done within their lands and territories. And so the direct
Absolutely.
financing through through various sources will really support, and we've seen that has supported communities in contributing positively, to
Mm-hmm.
conservation of biodiversity.
Are there any particular financial models or initiatives you believe that are helping or could help this cause?
Yes, I'll give you some examples that are outside of the country, for outside of Ghana and region and globally.
Mm-hmm.
But also we know of examples right here in Guyana. There is the Kali Fund, and also there's Amazon Forest Fund, which really contributes to direct funding, contributes to direct funding for communities, community conservation, and community actors. These are funds that are focused on achieving the global biodiversity targets, and linked to the conservation convention on biological conservation. And so these things are really strong. There are other funds, but also I want to talk about their efforts in Guyana
Mm-hmm.
through the carbon credit scheme
Yes.
that really allocates 15 plus percentage of those payments to indigenous communities,
Mm-hmm.
which goes directly to communities for them to determine how the funds are spent and where it goes to. It is not directly um, you know, for conservation, but it also contributes to the development of communities. So I think that's a positive effort. There are other like the Amerindian Fund,
Mm-hmm.
Development Fund also exists in Guyana,
Mm-hmm.
and also WWF has a program right now financed by the EU that we're implementing in partnership with Guyana Forestry Commission and other entities.
Mm-hmm.
And this also offers funds directly to communities. We actually published a call for ideas or call for concepts from community actors. So it can be community organizations, the
Wonderful.
community itself,
Mm-hmm.
even entrepreneurs based in Region 2 and 10 can submit ideas on what they want to fund um, to enhance their livelihoods and conserve the resources within their communities. And there are many other examples we can talk
Mm-hmm.
about. Some of them I can't even remember, but these exist across the region and also in Guyana. WWF, even in the region, is working with with actors in Colombia, Brazil, Ecuador, and working towards developing a fund for direct access by indigenous communities. So there are many examples, and I think that we can learn from these. Of course, all of them do not achieve the efforts that's expected in the short term, but in the long term, I do believe this can be a positive change and is a positive change for communities in particular, but also for achieving conservation targets.
Thank you for that, Ms. Williams. And to wrap up today's session, what are your thoughts on Guyana and Suriname and the role that it can play in being a global model for inclusive Amazon conservation? Because it's well known that both Guyana and Suriname, both countries have some of the highest percentages of forest cover. So, what's your take?
Exactly. Because Guyana and Suriname has so much
Mm-hmm.
rich natural resources, not only forest, fresh water, um, and biodiversity,
Mm-hmm.
biological diversity, several different species,
Mm-hmm.
both aquatic and terrestrial species and marine species also. Because we have so much resources, it's a lot is required of us.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in partnership with others, and I do believe that there are many actions already, and there are many strategies already that exist in both countries that contribute to conserving the Amazon and preserving biodiversity. Both Guyana and Suriname have some of the highest forest cover, as you
Mm-hmm.
said, and freshwater systems are healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but this it doesn't leave things there for us. I think because our economy and community livelihoods depend on these resources, and of course we're exploiting them.
Mm-hmm.
Both countries are exploiting them for their development. Um, we it's important that both countries really take action and continue to take action to preserve conservation. And there are many actions already taken. For instance, Guyana has its Red Plus program at the national level, which really contributes to preserving forests. It's required by all. I think it's important also to ensure that every economic sector really positively contributes to preserving the country's resources, which in turn, of course, positively maintains the Amazon. And so, even though, for instance, gold mining exploits natural resources, it should be done in a way, the gold mining sector really, it should be done in a way that it reduces impact on freshwater resources. It reduces the impact on forest. It contributes to reforestation and restoration of forest resources. this is very key. I think also that it's important to have policies at the national level,
Mm-hmm.
but also coordination between the two countries, and of course forming alliances with other partners within the region for collaborative efforts, joint strategies for conserving forest and biodiversity. I think that's key. Guyana, it's no secret that Guyana and Suriname are among the smaller populations in the region. And coming together and forming alliances and strategies will strengthen the case for the Amazon. I think also it's important to have financial support and financial models and mechanisms. Not only sources coming from the Amazon countries like or from Guyana and Suriname, but also agreements with private sector, with multilaterals, and other governments outside of the region, really providing financial support that provides or enables
Mm-hmm.
these countries to really maintain the Amazon. I think that's a key factor, really. Knowledge sharing, you know, exchanging on approaches, technology for conservation is really key also among the two countries as well as in the wider Amazon to really conserve biodiversity, because it makes no sense if you have a success story, you have a
Mm-hmm.
good approach. Why keep it to
Absolutely.
yourself? Really share it with others. I think that's important. And lastly, it's not that I'm not, I'm just, these are not the only
Mm-hmm.
things I think that are important, but also, as we were talking about communities, indigenous and local communities, ensuring that their rights are enshrined in law and
Mm.
policies will support conserving both Guyana and Suriname's natural resources, and ensuring that they have, communities have stronger voices, and their voices are enhanced and supported in conserving their territories
Right.
and conserving biodiversity. I think that's very key. Um, a lot of the natural part of Guyana and Suriname are inhabited by indigenous and local
Right.
communities, and so they are important actors that should be supported and enabled and empowered to contribute to conservation of the region.
Ms. Williams, you have given us a number of thought provoking perspectives to consider and to digest. So I want to thank you so much for enriching our podcast session today. So much to think about. Thank you very
Hey, thank
much.
you so much for having me too.
To our audience, thank you so much for joining in as well. We will be bringing you more insights regarding the fight to protect biodiversity. I am Kiana Wilberg. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to United for Biodiversity, the Alliance podcast. Be sure to follow us for more insightful episodes on our Spotify, LinkedIn, and Facebook accounts.